Hello and welcome. My name is Helge Maat. I work for Testhouse Spain, and today I will give you an introduction to the MOS Scalability pack. This is the welcome screen. The client gets a short introduction. On the left hand side you see the navigation box featuring all the steps of the configuration process. By clicking on any of them you're able to skip instantly to any step. This box is contractible. In the title bar you see the current step and the total number of steps. On the lower left hand side you can switch into the advanced mode, which will only impact the load test configuration. And on the lower right side you have the typical wizard buttons. The next button, the previous button, which is hidden because we're in the first step, and the cancel button. Coming to the first major part of the application, the environment modeler. On the upper left side you see the hierarchy of the system. Here the user can add machines and environments. Environments are just logical and graphical representation groupings. They do not affect the load test itself. This diagram will appear later on in the report generated after the load test has been executed. Now let's add a machine. Machine names should correspond to actual host names or IP addresses. So I'm going to select localhost. On the right hand side you see the set of monitors available. Those are the same monitors available in Visual Studio. And in the upper corner you see monitor presets. Those are sets of monitors selected for direct assignment. For example, if I want to assign the firewall server role to my machine, I'm going to drag and drop it onto it, and as you can see on the left hand side, this assigned application and .NET application monitors to my machine. Now the user may also choose to customize this configuration, so let's add an SQL monitor. Again, do this by dragging and dropping here. This attributes in the lower left corner of the tool are again only for the reports. They do not affect the load test itself. Here the user may add information of the machine. For example, he could put the amount of memory here or the type of CPU. On the bottom of the diagram you see save and load buttons. This is so the user does not have to create this diagram, this image, every time he runs the tool, but just once. I prepared one, so let me load it. Here we go. Here you see samples of attributes. That is it about the environment editor. Coming to the next part, the creation of the content for the SharePoint server. In case there is a vanilla installation of SharePoint server and the user needs test data for the load test, he can use this part to create a site structure which roughly resembles, or as close as possible resembles, what he expects it's going to have. So you can choose the total number of subsites, how many of those are going to be document workspaces, how many of those are going to be meeting workspaces, and how many of those are going to be team sites. Then there are a few more options for document workspaces and team sites. On the next page, the user gets a short description, a short explanation what he has to do with the files that are going to be created when I press the Generate Data button. I will store them on the desktop. As you can see, it created a new folder in the location I selected, containing the application, the SharePoint server data population tool, plus the configuration file for that, which we just created, plus 2 batch files for one-click population and one-click data removal on the SharePoint server. So the user just has to copy this folder to his SharePoint server and execute those batch files. Now coming to the main part of the application, the load test configuration. This is where the advanced view comes into play. This part features the basic mode and the advanced mode. So first of all I'm going to show you the basic mode, and then later on I will go back to the first step, switch into the advanced mode, and you will be able to see the configuration done by the selections of the basic mode. So the first screen, very easy, you just have to enter a name for your scenario. Let's call it my scenario. Then the user has to decide what he wants to achieve with his load test. So he can select the number of users he wants to emulate. Default is 2000, I will leave it at that. And then he can select from a set of predefined typical load test scenarios. This is a point of extensibility, so in the future we are planning to add more of those scenarios. For now, let's select the login during the morning. As you can see, the user gets additional information what this scenario is about, plus, if necessary, a few more configuration options. In this case, for example, 2000 users would log in within 30 minutes. Next, the client has to decide on what type of user he expects to be using his SharePoint application. We have a few pre-made users. Again, this is also a point of extensibility, so we're going to add more of those user types later on. So for example, we have the internet user, which would be a modern user using a broad variety of browsers, of internet connections. Having an affinity for technology, he is able to navigate fast through the SharePoint web server, so the users would have fast pacing and a low think time. Or mobile users, which would be restricted to the use of mobile browsers and mobile connections. So for the demonstration, let's select the corporate user.